Good morning, everyone. This is Jennifer Sanchez.
Good morning, Jennifer. This is Camilo Rojas, and this is our podcast program.
Hello, and welcome to our Autonomous Environment podcast. This program will show the impact of implementing self-assessment and self-regulatory strategies in language learning.
Jennifer, I would like to tell you a problem I have.
What's the problem?
Well, I finished my writing project for my French class, and it was a mess. I have a lot of wrong things. I feel frustrated. Can you give me a hand?
Of course, sure, Camilo, no problem. But tell me from your perspective, what did you do well on your project?
Actually, I haven't thought about that. I haven't been on time. Teacher told me I have learned a lot from my paper. He had a lot I learned from my paper.
Well, Camilo, did you write a draft before handing your project? Did you request another close person to read it?
No, unfortunately, any of them.
Camille, letting other people help you is a good strategy. It will give you another point of view to make changes, which will guide you to improve your project outcomes.
What a useful analysis, Jenny.
One more suggestion. After finishing your project, did you assess your learning performance while making the project?
No, not really. I'm not used to assess myself. Isn't this what is called self-assessment?
Yes, it is.
But Jenny, I'm confused. Can you help me to define the two main concepts? What is self-regulation and what self-assessment is?
Sure. Let's start.
Hold up.
Jenny, why don't we start defining self-regulation?
So, self-regulation is the capacity one has to control and alter your own behavior to adjust your learning actions. Self-regulation is about controlling how you learn.
What a great description, Jenny. Now, what do you understand for self-assessment?
Well, some authors define self-assessment as a process when learners undertake and undergo an evaluation procedure, estimating their goals and achievements in relation to their own personal learning expectations.
Perfectly. That is the reason Brown, Andrade, and Chen assure that self-assessment promotes self-regulated learning. When students carry out self-assessment, they're able to reflect on their own competences, which is a strategy to control students' learning process, and therefore they can take better decisions to learn effectively.
Actually, that is the reason why Rose believes that teachers may perceive high students' academic achievement from applying self-assessment in the classroom.
Of course, Jen. As you know, teachers are tutors, consultants, and information resource models provide all the necessary and essential language environment for effectively monitor and control learning process.
As a matter of fact, my dear Cami, some authors have presented in their studies the benefits of self-assessment in the learning process. Do you know some of the benefits?
Here we go. One of the benefits is that students can assess diverse features from the learning process. For example, measure their own learning process, appraise on their goals or achievements, and reflect on how their learning strategies are. However, I have a question regarding this part. Do you think teachers should participate on this part of the process?
Wow. The thing is that self-assessment is a component to develop autonomy. And self-assessment is the first step when a person starts evaluating his or her own learning process. Gardner, one of the authors who talk about assessment, say that it is a process that takes time. Additionally, the author recognizes three main roles for the teacher. First, the teacher's role is to raise awareness among learners regarding the benefits of self-assessment. Second, to provide guidance on and materials for conducting self-assessment. And third, to help learners understand the significance of their results.
Oh, Jean. That means the teacher becomes more as a coach to students to guide them through self-assessment. That reminds me of something. A professor made me a test to assess my independent work outside the classroom. Some questions were like, do you listen to news program in English? Do you take notes about the main story? Later, the next day, I get a newspaper and I check how much of the story did I understand. And the score was from 1 to 10. This was a cool strategy for checking understanding about a listening. And in this case, I got a high score.
Okay, Cami, don't forget that self-assessment should provide feedback rather than a score. Do you remember when Brown, Andrade, and Chen stated that self-assessment should not focus on grades to rise motivation and be a strategy for academic achievement?
You're right, Jenny. When we assess, we are aware of the changes that need to be done. I remember when Jan said that self-assessment is an ongoing task through the whole self-regulation process. The idea of managing self-assessment would be through the learning process rather than at the end of the task, since it has become a learning strategy.
Of course. You know what? That reminds me, the last semester, I handed in a writing task to my professor. It was at the end of the semester, and during the last class, the professor started to analyze one of my classmates' writing tasks. She made us think and find the mistakes by ourselves. It was an excellent exercise from which I learned so much since I developed critical thinking. However, it was at the end of the semester, after receiving a grade. She told us she did not make us fail the test, but it was not what I was expecting. That activity was unusual and useful. I was so upset.
Oh, Jen, but you learned something, didn't you?
Absolutely, but I had already received a grade. In that sense, it was worthless.
No, Jenny, it wasn't. Because you have learned how to write better using peer assessment and self-correction strategies. Have you forgotten what she explained?
No, I haven't. But imagine if the teacher would have done that activity before handing in our task.
I know the students might have had a more meaningful learning experience if the professor would have implemented self-assessment strategies during the learning process, instead of having an activity at the last part of the semester. The student might have learned in a more meaningful way. Look, Jen, the issue here is that some teachers forget that self-assessment is about receiving feedback during the whole learning process, at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. In such a way, students can make changes to achieve their class and learning aims.
Camille, that was a weird observation. Self-assess during the whole learning process. That makes me think the reasons why teachers need to be trained. Teachers believe that it is students' learning process. Likewise, most teachers are strongly related with summative assessment rather than formative. Then teachers have not been paying much attention to the importance of applying self-assessment in the classroom. The reason for that is teachers do not have enough knowledge about it.
That is true. If someone had helped me to make the analysis before, I would have done my projects more consciously and taken some actions. Teachers are facilitators and guiders in the classroom. They should promote those self-assessment and provide feedback. Some questions for self-assessment could be like, do I finish my task on time? Do I look for help when I do not understand? Do I make a draft of the task and look for some to receive feedback? After receiving pieces of advice, do I make changes according to the recommendations? Do I look for extra resources for more understanding of a topic or a task?
I couldn't agree more with you, Kami. Teachers should bear in mind this concept before creating assessment, because the purpose of assessment is to benefit the learner. The question would be, how would we do that? Okay, I got it. Authors like Kolb, Gardner, and Finland propose that during the learning cycle there should be a procedure for conducted assessment in which could lead the assessment through marking scale to set up actions based on the score achieved. Coming, it is pretty important to give feedback since it is a way in which the success of assessment is monitored. So I'd like to know what you think to do for your next project.
We agreed to have another person to read it and writing in a draft. I will do it because it will help me to make worthy changes and improvements. Now, for my next project, I will get you to read my project to receive my feedback.
Excuse me? Pardon me? I don't have time for reading your things. No. I'm just kidding. Of course, I'll do it. No worries.
Thank you. Time is getting over, Jen. Let's conclude. What is the difference between formative assessment and summative assessment?
Well, formative assessment is carried out through the process of learning to get a student's learning process, which does not include a grade or a score for judging failure or pass. Conversely, summative assessment is the final judgment when it is possible to see what a student learned and the weaknesses they have. Absolutely, it has to be scored, which will give the final decision if a student fail or pass. And that's it. Cami, could you please tell me where self-assessment takes place?
Self-assessment takes place in formative assessment. It is directed to receive feedback and raise awareness of changes needed to improve individual learning process. Since it is for guiding the learning process, support and guidance from a teacher throughout the course is vital to reach academic achievement. Therefore, it does not have a relation with grades or scores to give judgment such as failure or pass. In such a way, assessment for learning is when teachers practice inferences about students' progress to inform about their learning. Within the formative assessment, it is from the teacher's perspective. When we talk about assessment as learning, it happens when students reflect on and monitor their progress to review and monitor their future learning goals. In this time, this is from students' perspective.
Oh, Cami, you mentioned monitoring, so let's remember the relation between self-regulation and self-assessment. A self-assessment has a relation with metacognition, which refers to the way students are able to undertake a critical thinking to plan, control, and monitor the learning process. Self-assessment is the first step to develop self-regulation and autonomy, bearing in mind the importance of a student's goal setting and getting control of their own performance before, during, and after the learning process. This action prepares students to acquire self-regulated learning strategies, maintain motivation, improve attainment, and prepare them for lifelong learning. Cami, you mentioned teachers during this podcast program. Could you please remind me what is the role of the teacher in this process?
A teacher is a person who guides the process of learning rather than controlling it. A teacher is a person who can make an impact in students during the whole learning process, at the beginning, while, and at the end, rather than just at the end of the course. A teacher is someone who guides and conducts students on their own learning process to guide them and reflect on themselves and on their learning process as well.
Whoa, briefly. Self-assessment and self-regulation are connected, especially because self-assessment is one of the core instruments for measuring a student's progress during the whole learning process. Self-assessment allows the students to reflect and gain control on their process of how they are learning. In other words, they are self-reflecting. Therefore, students can see results in academic achievement. Of course, teachers need to be trained to guide students through self-assessment strategies, to monitor students' learning process and teaching learning strategies as well.
I think we have learned a lot, Jen. One of these strategies could be having a record of the answers of these following questions. Do I have a clear topic here? Do I look for help from another person to clarify doubts? Do I let others assess my task to receive recommendations? Do I look for extra resources to clarify doubts? Do I create a draft? This is my self-assessment for my next bench class in 2 days. I will bring my writing to you for getting a piece of advice. Nice. You see how self-assessment and self-regulations are connected.
Undoubtedly, Cami.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks for listening me and to us. Thanks all you for listening our podcast. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.